Good morning. That was a little, good morning.
Good morning.
That was wonderful. That was wonderful. Appropriate with this sunny day that we have, to have a warm welcome. So I am so glad to see all of you here this morning. But I do want us to take a moment and just think about those who this week have been impacted by gun violence. We have our colleagues and friends just down the road who are still reeling from that tragedy. And of course, there are many now who are suffering from and impacted by the hurricane. And so I would like for us just to collectively send our thoughts and our prayers. So if you would, please just close your eyes with me for a moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Reverend Kirsten, and thanks to all of you for being here this morning. I'm Reverend Julie Tonneson. I serve as the Associate University Chaplain, and helping to curate this space is one of the many joys of my job. We are pleased to welcome a returner to Newman Lumen this morning for our musical offering. Anthony Hotakainen is a sophomore now, a music production and recording arts major from Minnesota. Anthony has been in choirs and bands for the majority of his life, works on and produces original pieces, and I know is well on his way to continuing that music journey throughout college. So please help me to welcome Anthony Hotakainen.
Thank you, Julie, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are well this morning. To quickly introduce the songs I'll be singing, both To Simply Be and One Child Cries were written by my friend and mentor, Dr. Wendy Mulhauser-Tinglad, also known as Sissy Mary Sue, and were produced by our nonprofit, Sissy Mary Sue Education Fund. They're both about our connection to each other, the natural world, and just life in general. So I hope you find them as inspiring as I do. This first one is called To Simply Be.
As y'all know, or if this is your first time at Newman Lumen this year, you're getting ready to learn that our theme for Newman Lumen this year is Meaningful Relationships Matter. And so as we were thinking about the speakers we wanted to invite to this space this year, it only made sense to us that we invite to this space early on in our time together Dr. Buffie Longmire-Avital, who this year is the Faculty Administrative Fellow for Mentoring and Meaningful Relationships. In addition to that, Dr. Longmire-Avital is a diversity, inclusion, and racial equity scholar educator. In 2021, 2022, she became the first Black identified faculty member promoted to the rank of professor in the Colleges of Arts and Sciences here at Elon. She's a member of the psychology department, the inaugural director of the Black Lumen Project, an equity initiative, and is currently, is currently serving as the faculty administrator, faculty administrative fellow for mentoring and meaningful relationships. So please help me to welcome Dr. Buffie Longmire-Avital.
Good morning. So I have always known about Newman Lumen. I've gone to a few of them, but I've never spoken at a Newman Lumen. So I was spending my day yesterday and a few days before watching all of the various different Newman Lumens, hoping that I could perhaps find the right tone. And in the end, I decided to do what I always do when I write, is just let the words find me, and hopefully you will find something out of those words. During my sophomore year of college, unbeknownst to my mother and the rest of my family, I wrote and sent a letter to my biological father. I had secretly held on to the fact that years earlier I had used this new and amazing search tool called the internet to locate the man who knew I existed but had never given us reason for why he hadn't acknowledged me or my mother since birth. I spent at least a week crafting what I thought was the perfect introduction letter. I invested in the hope that his absence was because he simply didn't know me, but that once he read about my accomplishments, my likes and aspirations, if he were anything like his biological daughter, his curiosity would have him reaching out for not only more information, but a relationship. I knew it was an audacious hope. I sent the letter. I calculated the amount of time it would likely take to get from my small Pennsylvania college town to Florida. I graciously assumed that there would be a moderate period of shock and indecision, but then he would write. He would share the answers to my questions about family history, and most importantly, he would send a picture of himself. My mother has never shied away from sharing all she knew about my father. She has never spoken with any regret for the love and belief she had in him. In fact, she stated over and over at just the right moments that he was the key to receiving one of the greatest blessings of her life, me. However, my mother's selfless candor could not replace the need to see him, to confirm that although everyone remarks on the fact that my mother and I are spitting images of each other, she has always stated that I look just like him. In her move from Florida to Boston, where she would raise me and my older sister, she misplaced the few photos and news clippings she had of him. It is hard to find the words to adequately describe what it feels like to not know what a parent looks like. Cliche as it may sound, I have compared it to the feeling you have when you find yourself staring at a nearly complete puzzle, 499 puzzle pieces all in place, but that elusive 500th final piece is nowhere to be found. You don't take it apart. You revel in the picture that you have constructed. But despite willing your eyes to look away, they are always drawn to that very place that is empty. I waited, and then I called. This 10-minute call would be the first and last time I would hear my father's voice. There's no need to rehash the brief conversation. It ended with an unconvincing promise that all my answers would arrive in a letter he sent. The letter, if it were ever sent, never arrived. I knew when I hung up that any illusion of a relationship or of just simple acknowledgement was over. That day marked a very long period of grief. I had to find a way to mourn the loss of a relationship, of a role that was never fulfilled. More than 10 years later, in a car ride with my 2 sons and husband, my oldest would ask me a seemingly simple question. Mom, we have a savta, which is Hebrew for grandmother and what our boys call my mother-in-law. We have a saba, which is Hebrew for grandfather and what our boys call my father-in-law. And we have a grandma, my mom. So why? I should insert at this point a pit formed in my stomach, and my husband tightened his grip on the wheel. So why, my curious little boy continued, do we not have a grandfather? I took a deep breath and responded, while everyone has a biological father, not everyone has a dad. This exchange, initiated by the innocent curiosity of a child, was the catalyst to finally making peace with the ghost of a relationship that never was. I turned back around in my seat and slowly began to put a new puzzle together, one that was not dependent on a specific individual designated as my father, but instead, it was a curated composite of the many individuals who have fathered me. I do not stand before you, a fatherless daughter. I have always been my mother, Joyce's daughter. But I'm also the granddaughter of Paul Brown Sr., a man who left school at 9 years old to farm the tobacco fields just down the street in Danville, Virginia, before moving with my grandmother to New York City. A man who was my first math tutor, a man who taught me that seasoning is a consciousness that not all have access to. A man who inspired my love of fuchsia pink because that was the rich color of the rose he plucked off the vine for me in celebration of my kindergarten graduation as we walked home together. A man who decades after my grandmother's death kept her pink slippers in his top drawer. A man who urged my mother not to chase or beg for acknowledgement, that all the support she would need could be found with him and the family that loved her. A man who reminded us daily, no one act or actor stops the show. This message is the foundation of our resilience. I'm the niece of Paul Brown Jr., a man who taught me the importance of honor through his 30-year service in the Marines, and the Purple Heart he received but promptly tucked away because there was more work to be done. A man that provided an "I'm proud of you, kiddo," each time I went for it, no matter what the it was. A man that told me my greatest advantage is that no one will see me coming, that it is okay if and when people underestimate you, because it is in that moment that you will seize the control you need and overwhelm them with the power and ability only you possess. This is a lesson I rely on often. I am the sister, cousin, and niece of dynamic Black women who have and continue to pour into me and my dreams. I am the descendant of people who did not, could not, allow bloodlines and inherited roles to define the depth of the relationships or the responsibilities that come with raising the next generation. James Baldwin captured the importance of this collective care that defied the forces that attempted to strip away our ancestors' humanity when he wrote, "For they are all our children. We will all profit by or pay for what they become." Just a few weeks ago, I did not receive a letter. Instead, I received a phone call, followed by a flurry of texts from my paternal first cousins. Apparently, Ancestry.com is not a one-way window. If you can see your DNA matches, your DNA matches can eventually see you. I answered all the questions I could and graciously accepted the pictures that filled in many gaps. Ironically, it was not my biological father that I bore a striking resemblance to. My face and stature looks almost exactly like her, his sister, my paternal aunt, and cousin's mother. I imagine that seeing my photo left my cousins re-navigating their own grief of the mother they loved dearly and lost some years ago. My cousins exclaimed, "Welcome to the family," multiple times over the course of our exchanges. It made me smile, left me cautiously optimistic of what these unexpected connections might yield or not, because I stopped searching for expected relationships and have instead enjoyed embracing all the relationships I am fortunate to have that in both small and magnificent ways have kept me steady. As the Elon community embarks on a journey to document and celebrate just how much relationships matter and can be found here, I offer this cautionary advice. First, your worth is not a function of having specific relationships or a certain number at any given time. And second, it is not the ascribed, assigned role, expectation, or title that defines whether or not a relationship will be meaningful. It is the actions, the feelings, the carefully maintained vulnerability that allows you to be authentically imperfect, and perhaps, most importantly, the willingness to see you not only as you are, but what you could and will be that makes it impactful. Thank you.
Belong to all.